Not even on. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Murray.
Present.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Here.
Councilmember Woodard.
Here.
Mayor Matsumoto Wright.
Here.
And Councilmember McCardle and Sonmore asked to be excused.
Move to excuse council members Sonmore and McCardle.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? They're both excused. Thank you. Next on our agenda is public comment. Did we have anyone sign up for public comment?
We will have someone in person in just a moment. If there's anyone in the online audience that would like to speak, please use your hand raise tool.
In this paper.
Okay. No one in the online audience wishes to speak, but we do have Luke who? Okay. So if you stand right over at that podium. Nope. There. Thank you. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Luke. Today I have a plea to request consider rezoning about my property. It's also known as Seabrook Dental Laboratory. Before that, it was a Brookside restaurant. Okay, on this map, my property is on this corner, this very far corner of this gray area. Okay, so it's considered light industry. But this map does not do it justice because about the four sides, only my back door, my back entrance is facing light industry. The other two sides, both are surrounded by residential. And one side is actually totally trees, vegetation, there's nothing there, yeah. So, yeah, so you can see this map. On this map, my property is right here. It's right here, you can see. Yeah, to my left, it's all green, there's nothing there. This part is residential, that residential, this part is light industry. And my property is right here, well, it's a big building. Yeah, so we think, because I bought the property since 2020, so it's almost 3 years. And I feel that it's, because of entrance, it's located on the residential side of the building, yeah. Light industrial side, only back entrance. We don't use that. And I think it's much more convenient for us or everyone else to make into a residential or at least a mixed use, which means that people can rent for people to live in. Yeah, yeah. Because this zoning is just brutal. It does not do it justice. My property is right here. Yes. Okay. So there's a few benefits doing that. First of all, yeah, we have a little bit of homeless problem. They like to sleep on our front yard. There's a big front yard, and there's a big parking lot. They like to stay there overnight. Even just, I think that the day before yesterday, some people park their car and sleep over there. Yeah, if somebody stay there overnight in the building, then I think it can easily prevent it from happening. Yeah, I put a very high-end security camera, but they still come, yeah. Yeah, the police, I call a few times, chase them away, yeah, but the police say, well, sometimes, Washington state protect homeless. So, yeah, but if you have people who live inside the building, that makes a difference. So homeless people, well, I don't think they will come back anymore, yeah. So, yeah, that's a big.
Mr. Hu, your time is up.
Okay. Yeah, one more sentence, yeah. Just for the convenience of myself and the neighborhood, and for the common sense, yeah. Because that's a gray area, it does not do it. I'm right here, and I'm surrounded by residential, yeah. Okay.
Can I just explain to him that at public comments, we just listen to you and then we don't respond tonight?
Oh, yeah. But how do I do from here? Where do I go from here? So you say you don't comment,
No, we don't respond.
then
to
I just go home, and what do I do
Yes.
now? Huh? Oh, you're going to?
Oh, Stefan is going to.
Good evening, Stephen Clifton, Assistant City Manager. I am aware that this gentleman and our CED Director, Christy Osborne, have spoken, and there is a formal process that needs to take place when an applicant is seeking a rezone, and it needs to go through a very methodical process, and it would be premature for the council to comment on a rezone at this time.
Okay, so what does that mean then?
That means that we're done here
Okay.
for tonight, and you can go home if you want to.
We do have another public comment from the audience. Justin Kaplowski, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm just curious if anybody would like to speak on behalf of Laura and why she has not been to a meeting in quite some time.
Well, this is not a question-answer period.
I'm sorry, what was that?
This is not a question-answer period. It's,
Okay, I would like to make a comment about how one of our city council members doesn't feel the need to show up to at least 4 meetings in a row. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
thank you.
We do have someone online who would like to
Okay,
speak.
good. Thank you.
Hello.
William, you can speak now.
Yes.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. First of all, thank you for acknowledging my presence here in the meeting. I would like to address the ordinance on trespassing that's going to be discussed today. 2 things that I want to say right off the bat. First, I agree with members of the council on Thursday suggested that this ordinance needs further discussion. I believe that it does. Secondly, I think that the opportunity existed prior to Thursday, knowing that this ordinance was coming up, to reach out to the DEI Commission and ask whether or not we felt that there was some potential inequity and or perceived discriminatory language within this document. A couple of the council members, as well as Chief Call on Thursday, alluded that there's a possibility that could exist in this document, and that the attorneys and they should be involved with this language, as well as having further discussion to that. I want to get right to the ordinance. The ordinance discusses in Chapter 810 trespass warnings on city and other publicly owned property. However, during most of your conversation on Thursday, we pretty much referred to what was going on or potential threats and fears of disruption occurring in City Hall buildings. And I understand that that's a problem right now, but I also understand that this has nothing to do with, disruptions within this ordinance, has nothing to do with situations of people's behaviors within meetings within City Hall. My concern is outside of the building and what can be perceived as disruptive behavior and people potentially using their fears or misperceptions of people's cultures to alert the police for things that may not be occurring. Under 810-10, purpose, authority, and applicability, the chapter says in D, this chapter shall be enforced to emphasize voluntary compliance with laws and city property rules so that inadvertent minor violations of this section can be corrected without resort to a trespass warning. I don't really understand what that means. I think that deserves further conversation. Under behavior that is unreasonable, disruptive to others, Section 2 talks about unreasonably loud or vocal expressions or unreasonably boisterous physical behavior. I believe Council Member Woodard used an example as talking while being black, could be considered disruptive behavior. I look at item 3, using electronic or other communication devices in a manner that is unreasonably disruptive to others. The problem I have is with the words disruptive and unreasonable. I think of an example of if I'm sitting on a bench in Veterans Park listening to some Gil Scott-Heron or some Nikki Giovanni or someone of those natures of the 60s or the 70s, and someone next to me is not agreeable to what I'm listening to, even though it's not loud, there's no profanity. They just don't like the language that's coming from my music. Does that constitute disruptive behavior? It shouldn't, but under this language, it potentially could. And then we go to 810-030, authority to issue trespass warnings. Officers of the City Police Department can issue a trespass warning for an officer has probable cause to believe has a city ordinance has been violated. And then when you go
William?
down to Section C, yes.
I'm sorry, your time is
Yes.
up.
Okay. I guess in summation, I just think that this deserves further conversation because there's too much ambiguity, in this language, and it leaves too much up for interpretation, especially when you look at the review process. So that's all I got. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
That's the end of public comment.
All right. We should have held that one until it came up on the agenda. Didn't catch it soon enough. Okay, so that's the end of public comment. Next is the consent calendar. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve the consent calendar, items A through E.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next is the council liaison reports, and I'll just start over there with Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. On November 8th, I had the opportunity to sit in on the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County's coffee chat. It was on the ST3 light rail extension update. Great conversation. All of those are recorded. I encourage folks to participate or to check the recordings accordingly. Continuing on the 8th, I had the honor of joining Edmonds College's 10th anniversary Veterans Day ceremony and be recognized there. Another wonderful ceremony. It too is recorded if you wanted to revisit that experience. I also think it important to note, I practiced my civic duty on the 8th as well. On the 9th, I participated in our special session. On the 10th, I participated in our special session. On the 16th, I joined the DEI for one of their meetings, monthly meetings. I honestly can't recall anything that I should bring forward at this moment. And on the 17th, I had the study session with us, and then on Saturday the 19th, Ivy League with a number of you here. Thank you for joining us, and that is the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. On the 15th, I joined the recruiting kickoff meeting with city staff, and our mayor and mayor pro tem appreciated the opportunity to join that conversation, and excited about that process and our partnership with the organization that is doing that work in partnership with us. On the 16th, I had my first city manager meeting with our interim city manager, which was lovely and appreciated that time. Was at our work session on the 17th, and then met with, again, with kind of lots of city manager recruiting focused items here this last 2 weeks. And so had a meeting about kind of my thoughts about what we are looking for in, or what I'm looking for and what I think our community is in need of in terms of our next city manager, and some of the goals that I thought were priorities for our community. And again, I think it sounds like there's a lot of alignment, and just really excited to see that process move forward, and excited to have lots of very interested city manager applicants come our way. So hopefully folks will help us get the word out once that is live. And I think that's all I have. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor. On November 8th, I attended the Left One Retirement Board. On the 9th, attended our special session that evening and the 10th special session. On the 15th, Tuesday, attended the Arts Commission, where they're still evaluating progress that took place and the successes at the art show. And on the 17th was our work study session. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Wall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the 8th, I had the meeting, our monthly meeting with the Snohomish County Council Presidents and Mayors Pro Tem, where we talked about opportunities to be working together and whatnot. On the 9th and 10th, attended the council work sessions on about the budget. Also attended the council work session last Thursday on the 17th, and then had a couple of meetings with the recruiters for the city manager, as was previously mentioned. And then on the, also had a meeting with our interim city manager somewhere in there. And then on the 19th, I had the honor of attending the Ivy League and an opportunity to appreciate all the work that they've done, and appreciate Councilmember Woodard for organizing that to make sure that we are talking and working together with our folks that are doing some great work in the Veterans Park. So I think that concludes my report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, so for my report, on the 8th of November, I attended the ESAC coffee, and that subject was about Everett Link with Sound Transit, and that's the future link from Linwood up to Everett. Later that day, I went to the meet and greet for the new executive for the Board of Health. And then later that day, we had the Board of Health board meeting. And then on the 9th, I met with the kids in transition with our Mayor Pro Tem to see, I forgot. To listen to what they had to say and what their asks were. And then we had a special council meeting that evening. The next day, the 10th, I attended the AWC Housing Solutions meeting, which was the last one. And then we're getting the word out, or the paper out, of what we want to ask the legislature. And then that night was another special council meeting. On the 14th, I had a Zoom call with Housing Hope and Fred Sandstrom, and they're always looking for places to be, they would like to concentrate on South Snohomish County for their affordable housing programs, and so they wanted to talk to me. And on the 15th, I attended the city manager search kickoff, and then I listened in that evening on the transit connections corridor that that Mountlake Terrace put on for the public on Zoom. On the 17th, I attended the Board of Health Executive Committee meeting. And on the 19th, thank you to Councilmember Steve Woodard for providing lunch with the Ivy League and to have us attend and talk to the people who come every single month, once a month, and doing, I mean, they cleaned out a whole dumpster and a half full of things this Saturday. It's incredible what they do in their service to our city. So thank you very much. And that is the end of my report. Next will be the city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I've spent the last 2 weeks here in discussions with a number of you and members of the staff regarding the upcoming budget as well as other operational issues. And so I am fully engaged after 2 weeks with the city of Mountlake Terrace, and I'm very impressed with people I'm having discussions with. And so I'm very committed to assisting with the ongoing transition that the city is going through. As several of you mentioned, the recruitment process, the formal process for a new city manager was officially kicked off this past week. And so the next several weeks will be spent by the consultants with the assistance of a number of you in putting together the profile document that would highlight the role of city manager in the city of Mountlake Terrace, and then the active recruitment process with outreach to a number of organizations, including some emphasis on diversity and equity and inclusion in terms of the process to bring about a good group of candidates. The advertising will commence in December with the holiday season. It'll likely be mid-January before it's actually concluded with the identification and recommendation of several finalists in early February, so that the targeted interview date after the council has accepted the list of finalists would be the first couple of days of March. So it's on a fast track to bring about a city manager, and I'm pleased that most of you are, all members of the council have been involved and will continue to be involved in that process. We're also about to launch the recruitment process, or the posting of the council member vacancy, with Councilmember McCardle having submitted his resignation, even though it's not effective until December 19th. So we will be, we've reviewed the procedures, we've reviewed the state law which governs the process, and I know several of you have been through this before, but we will be posting and submitting to you a recommended timeline and schedule within the next week or so, so that we can, as quickly as possible, solicit applications from the community as to who would apply to be appointed by the council, of course, to fill that vacancy. So that recruitment process will be underway as well. We did submit to you, or I did for my first time, the weekly update with the number of items, which I certainly won't go over. But I did become aware that Veterans Park, where a number of you spent a good part of this past weekend, apparently will be closed from November 30th to December 2nd, as the Sound Transit project is going through its geotechnical work on preparing that site. And so in order to ensure safety for all involved, the park will be closed just for those few days. And so I wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. And other than the tree lighting ceremony, which I think you're all aware is scheduled for December 2nd, that would conclude my report.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the number 6, which is the public hearing and adoption of the 2023 revenue sources, including property tax. It's not turned on yet.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. I'm the Finance Director. And tonight I'll, let's see, I will be presenting to you the property tax ordinance.
Are these even on?
It was presented to you on November 17th, and would you like me to present it again? PowerPoint? Okay. Oh, it's already up. This is the 2023 property tax and other revenue sources. The general fund revenues, the operating revenues, 62% of general fund revenues comes from the taxes, 13% from charges for services, and 25% from interest, state shared, and miscellaneous. And you can see, do you need me to zoom in further, or can you see this? Right. The property tax is 26.8%. You can see it in green here. %, of public safety of our general fund expenditures. 13% is internal services, which is finance, HR, IT, and property management. 8% is community, economic development, and engineering. 7% is park recreation. 5% is transfers out to streets fund and the debt service fund. 7% is legislative, executive, and community relations. 19% is ARPA. The operating expenditures as presented in this chart does not include reimbursement for the interfund transfers. This chart shows the current 2022 total property tax rate for Mountlake Terrace residents. There are 7 different taxing districts that collect property taxes from Mountlake Terrace residents. The state and Edmonds schools receive about 68% of the property tax collected, and 18% of the property tax goes to the city. Snohomish County, Swedish Hospital, Transit, and Snow Isle Library also levy and collect property taxes from Mountlake Terrace residents, which totals 14%. This next slide, this table breaks down the different taxing districts, non-voted versus the voter-approved tax amounts collected in Mountlake Terrace. 48.86% of the property tax collected are from voter-approved levies. MLT non-voted is the general operating property tax. MLT voted is 0.31 EMS and 0.17 GO bond civic campus. According to the Snohomish County Assessor's Office, the city's total assessed value for taxes in 2022 is estimated to be $5,333,866, which represents a 28.35% increase from the city's total assessed value in 2021. So this is the history behind how the total assessed values. Option 1, which is in this column, is a 2022 base amount plus new construction and refunds This would bring in $4,793,813 in property tax revenue in 2023 and would increase the annual total tax per average home by $20 a year over 2022. Option 2 includes a 1% increase plus new construction and refunds. This would bring in $4,840,000 in property tax revenue in 2023 and would increase the annual total tax per average home by $26. This table shows the two different options you have for setting the EMS property tax levy. The calculation of the EMS property tax levy is included on this slide. You first start out with the 2022 base amount, which is given by the assessor's office, which is $1,284,471. To this amount, you add the estimated new construction and refunds, which totals $47,720. This would total $1,332,191 as shown under option 1. This equates to a $6 annual increase for a home averaging $616,743 in 2023. Option number 2 includes a 1% increase plus new construction, which would bring the EMS levy rate to 25.22 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. This equates to a $7 annual increase for a home averaging $616,743 in 2023. When added to the $26 increase in option number 2 for the general tax levy, the total property taxes paid by the average homeowner would increase by $33 in 2023 for the amount paid in 2022. The comparison, this table shows the assumptions used to calculate the net effect of increasing the property tax levy by 1% for the general, operating, and EMS levy. The assessed value of the average home is estimated to increase by 28.35%, using the estimated assessed value provided by the Snohomish County Assessor's Office for the city's total assessed value. As you can see, the operating levy decreased by $400,000 in 2019 and $429,755 in 2022, which is now held in bank capacity. The state of Washington has a budget-based property tax system, not a tax rate system. So when assessed values increase, the rate decreases, and when the assessed value decreases, the rate increases. Property tax rates in Washington use a complex math exercise to determine the rates. The amounts of the levies are set by the taxing districts. They do not set the rates. The county assessor's office sets the rates based upon the amounts levied by the tax districts. This table shows that with option number 2, the average taxpayer will see a 33 total tax increase from 2022 to 2023. Typical total property tax paid per average residence for Snohomish County cities. So you can see Woodway, Mill Creek, Edmonds, Briar, and Mountlake Terrace is in green here, $4,173. This graph shows the total current 2022 levy rate paid per residence in our surrounding cities. Mountlake Terrace's rate of $8.68 per thousand of assessed value is 60 cents above and $2.10 below the lowest and highest levy rate, respectively. So you can see here's in green is Mountlake Terrace, and then the highest is 10.78, which is in Snohomish, and then the lowest is Briar. This slide shows different comparable cities' current 2022 levy rates, which includes only the city's general operating and EMS levies. Mountlake Terrace's $1.42 rate is again on the lower side of the scale. So there we are again in green. This includes the levy for separate fire districts. This graph shows the 2022 average residence value of our surrounding cities. The average residence value in Mountlake Terrace used for 2022 property taxes was $480,500, and it is estimated to increase to $616,743 for 2023 property taxes, or a 28.35% increase. And again, this is the table. You can see where we are in regards to the other cities surrounding us. The recommendation is to adopt a property tax ordinance that includes a 1% increase in the general levy and a 1% increase in the EMS levy, which is consistent with what is included in the proposed budget and the 6-year financial forecast. Included in your packet are draft resolutions for the EMS and general property tax levies that includes the 1% increase for the regular levy and a 1% increase on the EMS levy, and also a draft property tax ordinance that will levy the city's property taxes for collection in 2023 to include levying the excess levy for repayment of the UTGO bonds. At the November 17th council meeting, there will be a public hearing, including property taxes. This is the end of my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions before we open it up for public hearing? All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Public hearing is now open. Were there anybody signed up to speak?
Justin, you were signed up to speak. Did you want to speak on this particular issue, or was that for the last?
I said no.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's anyone in the online audience who would like to speak on this issue, please use your hand raise tool. No one has raised their hand, so no comment.
All right. Okay, so are there any go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Okay, so go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I assume we need 3 separate motions. Okay, then I will start with the first one. Move to adopt the resolution of intent for general operating levy in both for collection in dollar and percentage increase.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Oops, and the wrong one here. All opposed? Motion passes. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to adopt the resolution of intent for emergency medical services levy in both collection in dollar and percentage increase.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to adopt the property tax levy ordinance.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And, all right, and so we are done with that. Thank you very much. Next is a review and adoption of the trespass ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. For the record, Pete Cobb, Police Chief of the City of Mountlake Terrace. This is the second time I brought this before you after some discussion last week. I'll go over briefly the context of the ordinance. Occasionally, city staff encounter individuals who exhibit disruptive, abusive, or criminal behavior in the city building or on city property. Some time ago, the city adopted codes and provisions allowing criminal trespass warnings and exclusion from city parks from such behavior. We presently do not have such an ordinance for addressing non-criminal issues in the city building. A need exists for a process by which disruptive individuals can be excluded from city buildings as well. We discussed it at a previous meeting. Following a discussion at the November 3rd council meeting, the city attorney, the police chief, the city manager, and members of the executive leadership team met to discuss several questions that were raised by the council. It was the general consensus of that group that proposed language in the ordinance was appropriately specific and did not create any equity concerns. Specifically, I would like to call your attention to, if you look at the ordinance on page 6, I believe. Let me get the right page here. Let's go to page 3. Under 5D, specifically it says, any constitutionally protected action or speech is excluded from the prohibited behavior listed in this section. And also, as you look through the ordinance, you'll find that there is a due process for appeal and reconsideration of anybody trespassed from city buildings. It's a consensus of that group that specifically these two protections are sufficient to mitigate any questions or concerns that may arise as we move through and enforce this ordinance. Also present with me today is City Attorney Hillary Evans, who was pivotal in writing this ordinance, so we'd be glad to accept any questions from any of you about this.
Okay, do we have any questions? Ooh. Okay, Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Attorney Evans. Just a couple of questions, but first I want to acknowledge from the public comments, I appreciated those comments and those concerns, and I think you just addressed them as best you could. And so in that regard, I actually just had really two questions that are my own, and the first one is actually on A.10.060, the review procedure, or easier found on page 6 if you're looking at the actual document. Under E, it lists Jefferson County as the location for part of the process. And I just wanted to make sure that wasn't a typo. I don't know enough about our judicial system that maybe we have to be outside of our own county for some type of built-in quality assurance. So this felt we should address that one real quick, and then I'll get to my second one.
Good catch. It should say Snohomish County, and that can very easily be changed.
Oh, okay. Well, that's easy enough then. Nothing else shows you I am reading your documents. That said, that same page, same section, but on this particular case, it's under B and then the number 3. And so basically that's the top of page 6, if folks are looking for the code, which is the trespass warning was based solely upon the statement of a third party, was not observed personally by the issuing officer or a city or the government employee. I was trying to make sure that we address what safeguards we have if it literally comes down to he said, she said, and that's the difference that I want to make sure, one, the person being accused has rights, but also the accuser also has their rights. And so I was trying to figure out how does that play out? Just what are our safeguards to make sure that if we do get into a he said, she said, we have some semblance of, well, we didn't see it, therefore we don't believe it. I'm not sure that's what that says, but that's what it kind of felt like. And so I was thinking as a city employee, that could be a weird space to be in.
Let's talk about the term probable cause. It has a legal definition, which I'll do my best to give you from my academy days, but a series of articulable facts and reasonable inference drawn from those facts that would lead a reasonable person to believe the stated action took place and a specific person did that. That's a really fancy way of saying that you need to give us some evidence that it occurred other than just he said, she said. Again, this is relying on the judgment of the officer that's showing up. At some point, it has to come down to who we're going to believe based upon veracity, statements, videotape, whatever it takes. Hillary, if you have a better answer for that question, I'm willing to listen to it.
Yeah.
No, I think you did a great job. I think what's important to remember is that probable cause is a legal term, and it's a standard that our police are used to dealing with. I think the chief did a great job of explaining that.
Yeah, so I think I see what you're saying is that if it would not ordinarily be relied upon by police officers in the determination of probable cause, and you're saying that's a legal term that kicks in, and there's a threshold that has to be met so that we don't get caught up in, well, we didn't see it, therefore it's not necessarily true. Okay, I mean, again, I just want to make sure we address that and see, well, what do you normally do on that? I will say maybe a different way to come at this, and I'm not sure this is fair to you, this might be more to our city manager, which to me this seems to be an undercurrent conversation about de-escalation skills, which I would think if we have de-escalation skills, one of those first pieces would be to have someone to triangulate what's happening. I'm just using fancy terms to say somebody else is there to see that. But if it's, not our common practice, I would say that seems to be one of those areas we'd want to make sure we invest in our personnel. And de-escalation is needed everywhere, so I don't think I'm saying anything groundbreaking there, but just saying that might be one of those areas that gives us a chance to avoid this portion of the very subjective situation, I suppose.
Well, no, Councilmember Woodard, I'd be happy to comment. As new as I may be in Mountlake Terrace, I've got decades of experience in city government working with police departments around the state of Washington, and I've met with Chief Caw extensively over the course of the last couple of weeks. I believe that there's a new emphasis in Washington State policing on the importance of de-escalation skills and understanding different types of behavior. And so, I'm not suggesting that, that there may be community concerns about policing in general, but I think that police departments, and certainly the Mountlake Terrace Police Department, has stepped up to the challenge of being a progressive law enforcement agency in a community that is a diverse community, but is a community that certainly underscores the importance of public safety. And so in my view of this matter, having been introduced to it just in the last couple of weeks, is that there are, safety concerns for employees and others. And I think that was the overriding concern for bringing this forward in the first place. But the concern about not just the integrity, but the skill set of police employees to respond to this is something that I personally feel very confident about.
All right, you have more?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Thank you for that. I just want to be clear. My concern actually wasn't with the police department. I was thinking actually for the city as a whole, just all of our employees, making sure that they're feeling like they have the training, the de-escalation training in particular, to handle these situations, and just making sure that we haven't stumbled upon something that they haven't been able to articulate themselves or have been. And I would argue this council should be familiar with whether or not our staff as a whole, so our front desk workers, quite frankly, our janitors, or anyone in the organization feeling like they have the de-escalation skills at their disposal. It's a job growth opportunity, but also keeping yourself safe. And again, I'm looking at it through that lens of I'd hate for it to be I call officer, whoever, Chief Caw over, and now you have to determine, well, what happened between these two folks. And I don't know, that seems like a fair situation to put our officers in if our staff doesn't feel like they even had the skill set to de-escalate it. But again, I'm just talking out loud and just making sure that we are looking at, we're not missing something bigger here.
Sure. No,
to an
I
ordinance.
appreciate the clarification, and I think my response to your original concern or question had to do with police department skills, which I've already mentioned. But I do believe that city employees, non-police city employees, also ought to have de-escalation training in terms of understanding what might be called difficult people or difficult situations, because circumstances like that are very much a part of working in a city hall in the year 2022, whether it's in Washington State or throughout the country. And so it is an important recognition that city management needs to have, so that employees understand that they're dealing with different people, and that the answer to all those situations is not to call the police, but is to work through different skill sets to do that. So yeah, I personally understand that and am committed to advancing that agenda. I'll admit to you, having been here such a short time, I'm not aware as to who's had what training, but that training is available, and we can certainly pursue that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief Kaw, for coming back, and I guess I want to echo Councilmember Woodard's what he said around my concerns that I raised previously, and the concerns that I still hold and I'd like to speak to have nothing to do with my concerns about our police department, and I hope that that has been evident in the conversations that we've had when you've come here, and you know, the appreciation that I have for the work that you and your team do, and the intentionality I think that you have gone about that work in a way that has lent itself to a lot of credibility with our community. I think where my concern comes from is somebody who spends a lot of time in my day job thinking about policy and has spent a lot of time learning how policy can unintentionally have really negative impacts. You know, I was concerned about some of what I saw. My first reading of this was some potentials for bias. And I think to follow up on some of the conversation around the probable cause piece and who can potentially, I guess, what could potentially lead to a trespass being issued. I mean, I guess as I read this, when I look at page 4, so under 8.10.030, authority to issue trespass warnings. So it gives officers of the city police department are authorized to issue a trespass warning to any individual who the officer has probable cause to believe has violated any city ordinance, city statute. Sorry, I'm gonna skip forward, but where's the, oh, okay, sorry, it's down in the C. So the warning may be based upon observation by a police officer or a city or other government employee, or may be based upon a civilian report that would ordinarily be relied upon by a police officer in determination of probable cause. So could you speak to, like, what does that mean that we have? It says that a citizen could file a report and that would lead to a trespass order.
I think what it's referring to more than a report is a witness statement that's sworn to under penalty of perjury. Oftentimes, even in the investigating crimes, particularly misdemeanor crimes, we rely on witnesses that fill out statements. We have to actually gauge their veracity to see if they're telling the truth, number one, and to see if there's a certain amount of credibility with the story that's being told in the statement. So what's referring to is a statement form, not initiated by the citizen perhaps, but that's more speaking to the citizen being a witness to the event.
Okay, that is helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, I mean, I will say that my concerns remain because unfortunately we are seeing the exact same draft of the resolution that was put before us several weeks ago, in which I expressed concerns. I think there were some, you know, conversation where there seemed like there was willingness as a council to revisit and see if we couldn't get to a better solution. And then we heard from the head of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission tonight expressing concerns about this. I wish we had I want to move forward with ensuring that our staff have what they need in order to feel safe and be safe. And it feels really hard to move forward with this, given that we didn't make the adjustments I think we could have, and we didn't have the conversations that we could have, particularly given the resources we have in our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission to reach a better final version of this. And I guess I'm disappointed that this is where we're at, because I feel like without a lot of workshopping, which can be really hard to do, as we talked about last time, the reason we took it back was because we recognized that in workshopping this ourselves and trying to remove potentially problematic language, that it could throw everything off. We're not lawyers, right? So I was hopeful that we would have a version that was that maybe addressed some of those concerns, and it's unfortunate that we can't, that I don't feel like we have something here that moves forward with the really important things that I think we do need to put definition and clarity around, without potentially putting forward some things that I think, we all have biases. I think I think it's something that we just need to recognize and be intentional about as we move forward in thinking about creating new code. And I think particularly when we ground ourselves in our values of being a welcoming and inclusive community, I think there's pieces in here that don't speak to that, at least how I would like to see us show up. So thank you.
I'd love to respond to that if I could.
Go ahead.
Councilmember?
Go ahead.
The chief is not exaggerating. The entire ELT sat around and workshopped this language, and the chief is correct. It's something that I initially drafted, that I worked with him on. It's taken from other cities that have used and vetted this type of language, and we are stuck. I mean, one of the problems inherent in policing is that you are relying on a police officer to make a reasoned judgment based on their training and experience. And there's really no two ways about that. It's very hard to avoid the words reasonable or probable, because our police are well-trained human beings, and they are human beings. And we would love to make adjustments to this language. I just couldn't think of any. Our team couldn't think of any. So, we're bringing it back. You can absolutely vote on it today, or you can give us very specific language, suggestions or direction. This is something that needs to be done for the safety of staff. So we apologize if this feels rushed, or if the process was quick, but we have had a very difficult time crafting anything that puts additional bumpers in linguistically, for lack of a better term, to constrain our officers any more than using legal terms like probable cause, reasonable suspicion, words that they're very familiar with and trained in. It's just a difficult thing to do. So we'd be happy to workshop it further, but we do need some concrete suggestions on where to go with it. Because I can't frankly think of a darn thing. I heard all of your comments. I watched your council meeting workshop, and I worked with some other, very smart, talented people. And we couldn't improve upon it, which is not to say it can't be improved upon, but we do need, if you want us to change it or amend it, we're happy to do that, but we need some pretty concrete instructions.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Attorney Evans. I appreciate the effort, and I do not discount by any means, I think, the intentionality that has gone into the process, from the executive leadership team. I think to talking about training, I'm not sure what training the executive leadership team has gone through around bias and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that would be really interesting. I think our police department has historically done a really good job of sharing the trainings that they take, and would love to understand better what that looks like from a city staff perspective. I will say I think we know that city staff does not represent the demographics of our community, so I want to name that in these conversations that were being had around whether or not there's the potential of bias and negative impact around our community. That was being made by a group of folks that don't necessarily look like our community. And my ask would be that we have a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission who seems to have, at least their chair has thoughts on this particular ordinance, and would love to see us partner with them and give them the opportunity to share feedback on how we get to a place where, this is less likely to have unintentional consequences in the execution. I think I called out specifically my concerns around section 8:10:20 around definitions. I mean, I would love to see a lot of the verbiage in section C struck. Again, I think we could address a lot of the concerns that we have around dangerous behavior, illegal behavior. I mean, the illegal behavior, sorry, and I'm scrolling all around, but I mean, it calls out, I mean, verbally threatening to harm folks, you know, it calls out stalking, and it calls out all sorts of things that we would potentially, I think, be concerned about from a staff perspective. So I'm happy, like, I think, again, C is the section for me that feels like perhaps it takes it a step further than at least for me feels comfortable. So I guess if that is clear, if that's not clear, I guess, Hillary, I would love, you know, to help provide more guidance, but those were my initial thoughts, and those still remain my initial thoughts.
Go ahead, Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Kyle, this trespass ordinance must have been prompted by some behavior that has been witnessed in the City Hall and the police department. Is that what prompted this?
Yes, there has been some, but over years, there has been several instances of late. Yes, of course.
Okay. And then the part that was 30, I lost it. The one, oh, here. Using electronic or other communication devices in a manner that is unreasonably disruptive to others. Is that like when people are trying to have business, someone's got in the office, they're talking on the phone and other people can't hear around them? Is that kind of what that's about?
That would be one example. I think there probably could be several others, but that's a good example.
Okay. So this isn't necessarily someone with a phone in the park, like playing loud music?
This specifically addresses behavior in buildings.
In buildings.
But I think loud music in a building would certainly be disruptive. Again, that's a judgment call of what's loud. I think we all recognize what's acceptable and what's unacceptable, but it's sometimes difficult to define in a sterile environment.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you want to change that for in buildings or just have to, you know, I think we have to probably take it on the officer's word, you know, if it's disruptive or not. And then if, and like third party, he did this, she did this, I think the police do a good job. They go in and don't just try to figure out, they try to figure out who did what. But I think they go into what would be called problem solving and see if the two people can agree to settle their dispute right then and there.
Yeah, that's part of de-escalation. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I want to acknowledge the concerns that have been raised. I mean, personally, I'm comfortable with it, but then as Councilmember Murray points out, you know, I'm not the potential, I mean, I'm not the potentially offended class or whatever, and I may not be looking at this with the concerns that have been raised, that how others may view it or how it may be interpreted by others. And so based on that, I guess I'd really like to see this come in some way before our Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Commission and give them the opportunity to provide the insight that I think I lack in looking at this. And so I guess I'd help me find a way to be able to address the need. And I guess, you know, part of it is being prompted because there's a concern that it needs to be done now. And delaying may cause irreparable harm or something, right? But at the same time, I think it is worth taking having our DEIC take a look at it, provide input, and be able to give us the insight that we need into this subject, this issue, and be able to come back with some, and if nothing else, even if it's nothing more than, even if they have no changes, at least be able to give insight and be able to get comfortable. It's an opportunity for, this is why we set this commission up, right? Is to be able to take a look and give us the insight that we need on these, on any number of issues, but to be able to help us understand what impact our laws have, and the policies we put in place have on a very culturally diverse society. And it strikes me just earlier today during our public comment session, we had somebody and we received a letter about trying to, wanting to rezone something, wanted to do something. And in their culture, it is perfectly acceptable to do it in the way that they're asking, because that's what they're used to. That's not our process. But most of us wouldn't know that if we weren't aware of their culture and the way they do business in back home, if you will, right? And so it's just help us find a way to be able to balance, I guess, the need to pass this ordinance sooner than later, while at the same time making sure that our DEIC is involved in this process, gives insight, has an opportunity to make suggestions, or at least get comfortable with what we're proposing.
If it is your consensus and direction for the DEIC to look at it before we bring it back to you for a vote, then give us that direction.
Is that the wishes of the council? Go ahead, Councilmember Woodard.
Yeah, I just want to put on record, spoiler alert, I'm black. So I'm not a part of this concern. I actually did read this as a black man. I do want to let you know, I think you did as best you can in terms of, I agree, there's nothing wrong with having our DEIC read it. I know I have stuff to learn. I do not want to speak for all black people, but I do want to be as clear as possible that we did have an equity lens on this, at least Steve Woodard did. I would encourage some of you to own the equity lens that you have, and that's acceptable as well. Which is why we're having this conversation. My concern, however, is while we wordsmith, you are still not going to stop the Karens of the world if that's what we're talking about. My understanding of this policy was this is actually a staff-initiated concern, which is why I was asking about, well, what's their de-escalation skills themselves? Let's make sure that that's not really what's being asked, but we're using a very formal process to remove that agency. So in that regard, to me, perhaps that's what's missing in here is some description of and I don't think you can put that in here, but nonetheless, just trying to recognize that this is inside the buildings, this is staff initiated, and there may be someone who is a third party not associated with us, but I get confused on why they would be trespassing someone if they too are in the building and don't work there and can leave themselves and file an actual complaint across the street. So I just don't want to acknowledge, I don't want to discount that this is probably as good as you're going to get. Because the things that we're trying to account for, I think they're built in here. If I am being charged with acting black or whatever it is you think it's happening and it's threatening to you, well, when the police officer shows up, I would expect them to be able to de-escalate. That would be my expectation of my trained professional police officers. If that's not happening, that's a different conversation to have. But what I don't want to do is have our staff remaining in some sense of fear, which I presume is elements of this, while we figure out how to be comfortable with it. I don't get to be comfortable with anything, this is not a comfortable conversation for me to have. But it's one that I needed to make sure we have on record, that we are doing as good as we can do. I do think we can do better, but I don't want to stall this any further per se. So really, perhaps a secondary question here is, how much paperwork are we involved if we were to pass something like this today, go through this process, because I think you heard me say we met as a DEIC yesterday, which means we're looking at December, which I think we've committed to having December, but we also know that can easily become January. But every day the staff has to come in. And to Councilmember Ryan's point, if this is actually acute, fancy word for, is this happening now? I don't think that we should be sitting too idle when I think that we can trust ourselves by very nature of asking the questions. So again, the secondary, perhaps main question here is there a lot of paperwork behind, say, passing something tonight so it's in place, and then us revisiting it after it's gone through the DEIC? And that's really, just so I can throw another fancy word out there, for my own edification. I just would like to know myself. Maybe there's a happy medium here, because I do want to support that the DEIC would absolutely bring a solid lens to this. I just don't know that we can't do both.
So the process to, if you were to adopt this code language, the process to amend it would be exactly the same as adopting new code language. We wouldn't have to bring it through any prior committees. We could just bring it to you with red lines and you could pass an amended ordinance.
That's what I thought. I guess I probably say that there's a second person of color on this council that didn't have a problem with it. So, sorry, but we're all, we all have our own lenses and so forth, and we all have our own one vote. So that's all I have to say on this. So what are we going to do? Are we going to then vote to pass it tonight, and if it doesn't pass, it goes to the DEIC commission to look at it and be wordsmith again?
We have a couple of alternatives. Someone could call the question and ask for a vote up or down, or as a consensus, you could postpone it or remove it with instruction paths. But I haven't heard anybody call the question, which means it's probably not going to be voted on.
Which is what we're going to do next. Okay, so let's vote on this. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I get a point of clarification. If we voted tonight and we cleared it, can we immediately ask for amendments, or is there like some wait period? That's really what I'm getting at, because I'm torn. I do think going to the DEIC makes sense, but I do have a level of comfort to say this can go now, stand in its place while we work it through the DEIC. And I didn't quite hear that, but that's what I'm trying to request.
You can amend it at the very next meeting if you wish.
Perfect.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We'll get the motion on the table, I guess, to start with. Move to adopt the criminal trespass ordinance.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, do we have discussion on this? No. Okay. Sorry, we'll have a discussion. Does anyone have anything to discuss, to add to Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And the reason I appreciate the opportunity to discuss before, because I am going to vote, because I want to echo Councilmember Woodard's comments, which is I am comfortable with this as it is, but at the same time, really want this, the equity lens, the opportunity for DEIC to look at this. So I'm going to vote yes on this with the caveat that I'm expecting, I guess, our folks to bring this before DEIC and let them have the conversation and input and insight. And if there's a need for us to make amendments, that we'll have the opportunity to do so.
All right. Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to my colleagues for the good conversation. I just want to be clear that I'm going to vote no, not because I don't support the safety of staff and don't want to move forward with things that make sense from my perspective to take care of that, but we had 2.5 weeks to go about having this conversation. It could have come before the DIC tomorrow or yesterday, and I do think that if it was as urgent as an issue as we are being told it is, then we had an ample opportunity to have those conversations and do that work before it came back before us tonight. And I worry about passing something with the idea that we are going to get to a better solution in the future. I will absolutely encourage us to hold that should this pass, but I cannot support it given how it stands currently. So thank you. Anyone else?
Go ahead, Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. I I think it's clear I'm going to vote yes for now, but also want to be as clear as possible that the DEIC be held accountable. Hopefully they're still listening. You requested to review this. I would expect to see this on your very next meeting, which I think I heard you all commit to making sure you met in December. So now you have a fire underneath you to meet in December, not in January. But I can't, in good conscience, allow us to hold back, not trust the folks that I've gotten to know across the 7 here who are voting tonight specifically. And I value their opinions and namesakes and trust, but at the same time, I got a staff here that's requesting us to act, and I can't get stuck in a bureaucracy of wordsmithing, even though I know it's deeper than that. And all I can give you is that was why I asked the Jefferson County question. I wasn't thinking race. I was thinking how are folks supposed to get to Jefferson County? Because that's easily part of the process. And so I wanted to first acknowledge maybe that's actually part of the safeguards. And so I was happy to hear that was an oversight because getting to Everett is a lot easier if you have to do that. But I feel like we have enough in front of us to vote. So long as DEIC, you hold true to your putting our feet to the fire, we're putting that fire back and welcoming you to that same ring.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And that brings a point, since the motion before us is to adopt what is in front of us, which currently states Jefferson County. We probably need a motion prior to passing this to at least make that amendment. Correct? All right, so
Go ahead.
see, I'm trying to think of Robert's rules of order here. So we're going to make a motion, an amendment to the motion?
And then do we vote on it all at the same time?
No.
No,
one at a
separately.
time.
Okay.
Yeah, so we only start by moving to amend the motion to strike Jefferson County and replace it with Snohomish County.
Second.
Now we can vote on that one. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries.
All right, so now we're voting on the amended motion.
Correct. Okay, so now you can go, Mayor Pro Tem.
We're call for the question.
Oh, we already did. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
So that's, my math, 5-1. No, hold it, 4-1.
Yeah.
4-1. And motion passes. Okay?
Okay.
So we're going to be hearing from the DEIC on this, and we'll have more work for Hillary. Thank you, Chief. All right, so next on our agenda is new business. Does anyone have any new business? Councilmember Woodard?
Technically, it's not new business. I just realized for the seriousness of the opportunity that I should amend my earlier liaison report to include that today. I did meet with the consultants, or excuse me, the search firm to get the conversation. Thank you, Councilmember Murray, for pointing out the actual what we're doing. And so you can look back to her notes if you need to know what that means, that meeting, and talk about the potential next city manager and the importance of that conversation. So I did get my chance to share my views.
I didn't have that in my report either. But I did have my talk with him. Anyone else? All right. So next thing on our agenda is to adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.